can't go because of the show. And if I can get on a Wednesday, he could come on here.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, but
You're on YouTube.
I'm on, yes, I am on YouTube. Hi, YouTube guys. We're going to be going on to the radio broadcast in 5, 4, 3. He quit counting down.
Opinions are.
So we should be coming up. Music is playing. Good evening and welcome. No, not yet. Wait a minute, you other two media guys that are watching us. We're broadcasting on 3 different things here, folks. So the radio is getting there now. Hey, we are here. Welcome to Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We are broadcasting live from the gun store here in Las Vegas on News Talk Radio, KDWN Radio, 720 AM on your dial. If you're listening on the radio, we are here. We are also simultaneously broadcasting on YouTube for those of you who are walking around with your iPhone in front of you. You can find us on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and then punch in Fired Up with Bob Irwin. It will bring you to the YouTube show, which is a few seconds ahead of the radio show. So don't try and listen to the radio and watch the YouTube. They broadcast a few seconds off from each other. And also this week we are on Periscope. If you are a Twitter person, you can get a Periscope app if you don't have it. If you follow us on Twitter and you have Periscope, they will send you an email when we go on the air. So you can tune us in on that and watch on all your electronic stuff. So we're like multimedia here. And usually 2 out of the 3 work for every show. So you'll be able to see us and listen, hopefully, kdwn.com streamer and on Twitter under their Periscope app. This show is related to guns, politics, and self-defense. We deal with firearms issues. As I said, my name is Bob Irwin. We always try to have an attorney on board because we deal with a lot of legal issues, and I don't want to get you off into never land because I'm not an attorney. I'm pretty experienced in firearms cases, but it's always good to have somebody who can actually say, you should do this, and they have the legal basis. Andrea Lee Loom is a murder defense specialist. She was with Special Public Defender's Office here for years and years and is now in private practice and handles predominantly murder cases, shooting, all murder cases, I guess, or violent crime cases.
Yeah, mostly. I'm branching out a little bit, but.
And is now in private practice, and she has graciously donated her time. You will find her contact information on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com. There's a list there of attorneys that work our show, and Andrea is right at the top now because she is, and if you are accused by the police or sued civilly for doing something wrong with a gun, this is the one you want, a very bright young lady doing this. You want to give a little bit of your background?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I started in Colorado. I went to law school at University of Denver, and I was practicing in Colorado doing criminal defense with the Public Defender's Office there for about 5 years before I moved to Las Vegas. And I've been practicing here for 10. Always criminal defense, and I started trying homicide cases around 2001 maybe, something like that. So,
that's like 14 years.
Yeah, 14 years.
And attorneys that defend homicide cases are like the homicide detectives on the other side. Homicide detectives are the cream of the crop of any police department. And the special public defender that works these cases gets the cream of the crop attorneys to, there's some cops around that aren't very smart, but not any homicide detectives that aren't very smart.
That's true. That's
very few criminal defense lawyers that are stupid, and ain't none of them that are stupid that are picked by their agency to do murder defenses. So, because they're, you know, if you mess that up, somebody gets executed and you go, whoops.
Yeah.
So they're pretty good at their job, and that's why I'm so happy to have Andy here. Andrea goes by Andy in real life. So, as I said, we're on the internet on YouTube, and we're on the Twitter feed through Periscope, and we are here on radio on kdwn.com. Unfortunately, because of the three media, we can't do call-ins because they all broadcast a few seconds different. So if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can hit my email just hit bob@firedupmail.com. There's a sign right there to tell you that. So you can send me an email. We respond to all the emails. Things that are critical to everybody or a lot of people, we'll answer on the air next week. But your emails, if they're only for you personally, should I buy a Derringer or a bazooka or whatever, I get that a lot. We'll respond to that. We'll have an attorney respond to the ones that are legal questions. And actually, I had one I was starting to respond to this week, and I really can't. A gentleman wrote that, can he get a list of all the new gun laws in Nevada? As you're aware, if you watch the show, a lot of stuff changed. The state took priority over firearms laws, with the exception of where you can shoot a gun. They still allow cities and counties to control that. And he wanted to know if there was a printed list, and there is not yet. The Legislative Council Bureau has sent some drafts out of the new wording, but I don't have anything hard that is going to be in the NRS. I should within a month, and we'll put a book out with it, and I'll put a note on the air that we have it available when that actually comes out with the actual wording. Sometimes it makes a huge difference where they put a comma or they put and or. And they're trying to sort those out right now because the legislature wrote some very nice laws for gun owners, but some of them were a little unclear. So obviously we need the Nevada Railroad statutes to say this is illegal and this isn't, not maybe. So depending on how you read it. Anyway, we always start off with a few shooting cases that happen to, some are good shootings, some are bad shootings. They're all food for thought for gun owners. Some are a gun owner doing something really courageous and brave and smart, or brave and courageous and not too smart. Some are disasters, but we present those so you, the listeners, can get an idea of real life with your guns, not just the crap they put in the newspaper that tells you one thing or another. I'm going to start with a story I didn't put on the outline I sent to Andy, because this just came over just a couple minutes before I went on the air. Channel 8 carried a story that an individual intervened in a bank robbery here in Las Vegas just after noon today. A Wells Fargo bank customer apparently was being robbed outside the bank. The female victim, the guy was trying to steal her purse. Apparently, she was knocked to the ground. He shot her in the arm. I don't know whether she was on the ground or got shot and then got on the ground. But anyway, she's being treated at University Medical Center. Her injuries are not life-threatening. Channel 3 carried the same story, which is, I tell everybody, I check all stories with a couple of sources to make sure they're real. And Channel 3 carried the same story. Woman was grazed in the arm during an armed robbery attempt. Lieutenant Jeff Goodwin said that this happened about 2:30 in the afternoon Saturday, 5800 block of East Charleston at Wells Fargo. Somebody was shot in the parking lot, and then they went into Wells Fargo to get help. Channel 3, however, added that Chuck Muth, a well-known political activist here in Southern Nevada, had arrived at the bank and broke up the attempted robbery, according to his Twitter feeds, adding that the man had the woman on the ground, was attempting to steal her purse, so he ran over to break it up. The guy ran off. Apparently Chuck Muth followed him into a housing complex where he lost the guy, doesn't know where he went. The police are now hunting for the guy. And Channel 3 also reported the woman suffered minor injuries and was being treated at the hospital. I subscribe to Chuck Muth's newsletter, so I'm sure there will be a huge story coming up. Treating this like any other case, I will tell you Chuck, that's a really bad idea to follow an armed guy when you're not armed. It's a whole lot better to let the police chase the guy down. We'll see how this fleshes out. You may have been surprised if you actually caught him. And some of the liberals would be very happy if you got shot, I'm sure. So, try not to make Pelosi happy by chasing armed suspects when you're not armed. Get a description, let the police do it. God bless you, Chuck. That's a really brave thing to do. I understand what happened. I might have chased the guy too, but sometimes I'm not too bright when I'm pissed off too. So anyway, now we'll go back to other stories that just came in. So I'm sure if you subscribe to Chuck Muth stuff, you'll find it on his website shortly. Houston, Texas, last week, I ran a story about a father who was killed during a robbery. You may recall he had taken his daughter and his wife out for ice cream. They were sitting in their car in front of the ice cream store. Father's in the front seat. The wife is sitting next to him in the passenger seat. The daughter is sitting behind the father in the back seat in a carrier. She's just not quite 3 years old. And the vacant seat behind the mother, some guy that was walking by jumped in the car, pointed a gun at the mother's head, demanded their money. The father, who was behind the wheel, is a CCW holder. He drew his gun from wherever it was and turned in an attempt to shoot the guy that was pointing the gun at his wife. They exchanged shots, and both men were killed. The father was killed, unfortunately. The bad guy got out of the car. He staggered for about 20 feet, getting toward his getaway car. He fell to the ground dead. This was a very sad story, and I'm bringing it up again because I got a lot of comments on it about tactical stuff, what the guy should have done, shouldn't have done. They should have had their doors locked. They should have had driven an armored car, whatever. Real gunfight. The guy lost. Sometimes the good guy does lose. And if he believed from the look or demeanor of the guy sitting next to his 3-year-old, not quite 3-year-old daughter, pointing a gun at his wife's head, that his best option was to try and kill the guy dead before he could shoot his wife, that may have been a very reasonable option. It went sour for him. I got a lot of emails, 15 or 20 of them, about whether he should have got out of the car and run around to the side where the guy was, and then the guy would have got out of the car and followed him, and all that stuff. It's all hypothetical, folks. What happened is what happened. He made the best choice he could have made. I don't know too many people who wouldn't have tried the same thing. Unfortunately, it went sour. Sometimes the good guy loses. I brought it up to indicate what happened and why. Yeah, he should have had his car doors locked. But who sits in their car in front of an ice cream parlor expecting to have a guy jump in your car with a gun? We can't live our lives like that. It's a sad, sad story. But don't second guess this guy, because he made a decision in a split second to do something better rather than nothing. And
he may very well have saved all 3 of their lives.
The guy may have killed all 3
right,
of them.
Exactly.
His next move may have been, after he robbed them, to shoot all 3 of them, or to take the daughter and sell her in, bondage somewhere. So
Sure.
You never know. At the moment that you come under fire, I ran into some British police officers today that were in the store, and we were exchanging stories about training and this and that. And one of them is assigned to an anti-terrorism unit in London, and so forth. And we talked about reactions and shootings. And I brought up the story on myself that the 20 minutes I was a reserve policeman in San Fernando, California. 30 years ago, my partner and I chased a guy who saw our police car and went, ah, and ran. Back then, we were allowed to do that. You could chase somebody for what they call black and white fever. That was probable cause to stop them and go, what are you doing? Why are you running from us? Can't do that anymore. But anyway, we did back then. And the guy ran, and we chased him, and he ran around the corner of a building into an alley. And I was the new guy. I ran around the corner. My partner stopped at the corner and looked around the corner because sometimes the guy's standing there. But anyway, he had run, and it was a blind alley. It stopped at a fence at the back. He'd only run about 30 feet, and there I am, and he fired around at me, missed me, fortunately. I got down behind the Dipsy dumpster that was there and put my gun over the top and fired like you see the old Vietnam pictures of guys shooting their M16. So, God knows what. My partner fired around the corner the same way. We scared the guy. He threw his gun out and surrendered. But at the time, I was teaching shooting. Not to the level I did later in life, but still, when a bullet went by my ear, I jumped behind a Dipsy dumper and fired over the top with no regard to the background or anything else or where the rounds are going. Because in that moment, you're just going to do something. And fortunately, I didn't kill the guy after he threw his gun out. Didn't hit him either. We were both lousy shots, and so was my partner. Nobody hit anybody. And it got me a lot of ridicule at the police department for a while, but what the hell, it's, you can't judge people in the middle of one of these things that you should have done this and done that. That's so easy to second guess people. Right. It's easy to second guess lawyers when they say something wrong and realize they've asked the wrong question in court, and it's done. It's out there, so you pick up anyway. The guy did the best he could. I don't really see a better solution than what he tried. Even looking at it over and over, I would have probably done the same thing. You just try and make a shot and stop the guy right there so he can't pull the trigger and kill your wife. But anyway, Oklahoma City. Here, I got a couple of women shooting their husbands stories. There just seem to be a cluster of them here, so I thought that would be appropriate. This is KOCO TV, Oklahoma City. A woman accidentally shot her boyfriend overnight in Oklahoma City, mistaking him for an intruder. Police said the boyfriend came home around midnight to the couple's home near Northwest 11th and Villa. The girlfriend was startled and shot the man in the head. He's okay. Police say the man would be okay. No charges are expected to be filed because of the accidental shooting. We have talked about using verbal warnings. Sometimes the guy that's in your house belongs there. I had a really bad case on a lady years ago that shot her husband who was coming home late, and she was half asleep and dreaming, and fired through the bedroom door at the sound she heard, not realizing it was her husband coming home. It's make sure you're awake. We always advocate using loud verbal warnings. 95% statistically of home intruders run away when you yell, "Get out of here, I got a gun," or anything equivalent. The nice thing about that warning, you don't even have to have a gun in order to yell that. It's okay. He doesn't really know.
Or maybe the verbal warning of the person coming home, honey, I'm home.
Yeah, honey, I'm home. Well, see, she's going to blame the husband. But,
I find it hard to believe that you would not expect your partner, your husband or wife to come home when they're not home, and you know that they're going to come home. I don't know why the first conclusion would be that it's a
it makes no sense. I'm glad they're not charging her with a crime.
Right.
Fortunately, he was not seriously hurt. If you yell a warning at the guy, the intruder, we're assuming it's a guy, it'll not only wake him up to the fact there's somebody in the house, it'll wake you up in case you're dreaming and what's going on isn't really what you think is going on because you're in that half state. It wakes everybody up. So yell at the top of your lungs. It's great. It wakes everybody up, and hopefully you won't shoot your husband unless, I understand, ladies, he really deserves it.
That guy in South Africa, the runner who said
shot through the bathroom.
Thought door. It was an intruder. I think it's a pretty plausible defense, maybe.
Yeah, there might be an intruder hiding in the. No, he ended up getting life and something, didn't he? I thought he did.
He's out.
He's out? Oh, okay. Well, he should have got life. Defense lawyer
He was an
thinks that's a
intruder.
reasonable defense. Firearms instructor thinks that's crap, but you know.
Well, it's a defense that worked. So,
Yes,
I mean,
well, it did. From the perspective of the defense lawyers, that was a good thing. Different wife shooting a different husband. This is TXK in New Boston, Texas. Man in critical condition in a Shreveport hospital after being shot by his wife early Friday morning. According to the Bowie County Sheriff's Office, they were dispatched around 2 a.m. for a 911 call. A woman saying she had just shot her husband. Upon arrival, the deputies met with a woman who escorted the deputies to her injured husband. He was found lying on the bed holding a towel over a gunshot wound. Medical personnel arrived and transported him to the hospital for his injuries. The woman informed deputies that she and her husband had gotten into an argument. The husband asked her to leave the home. The woman replied she was not properly dressed to leave the home at that time. It's 2 in the morning. The woman said he got a look in his eye that indicated he was getting ready to assault her. Apparently, she's been beaten by this guy several times. She retreated to the bedroom and locked the door. While she was attempting to barricade the door, he kicked it open, forcing his way into the bedroom. She retrieved a handgun from underneath the mattress of the bed and fired a warning shot into the wall of the bedroom above her husband's head. He continued towards her as she retreated back into the corner of the room. When she was no longer able to retreat, she shot him once in the torso and then called 911. Paramedics took him to LSU Hospital in Shreveport, where he's listed in critical but stable condition. A lot of things here. Here you obviously have a very valid shooting. There's a history of domestic violence, of her being beaten, and lots of, I didn't put all that stuff in the story, but they've been through this many times. Police have been to the house many times. She's backed into a corner. We talked a couple of shows ago, I don't think you were here for that particular show, about warning shots. Yeah, no police department in the world allows their officers to use warning shots. In some cases, like this case, I think they're very valid. She knew where the bullet was going. I will assume the background was okay because nobody was hit by the bullet. And we had a case a couple of weeks ago we talked about where the defense attorney brought that particular issue up, that warning shots were fired and used it. It was like this case where the guy then later fired real shots as a defense tool to show that his client wasn't trying to murder anybody. He was trying to scare them away, and that didn't work. They kind of used them as a verbal warning. Ever run into that?
yeah, as a matter of fact, I had a very similar case, and the woman fired a warning shot, and then he kept coming towards her, and she shot him, and he died. And she was arrested, and she was charged with murder, and she was prosecuted because they said that it wasn't reasonable. He was not armed. She didn't need to shoot him. And as a matter of fact, they didn't even know about the warning shot. We went back and retrieved the portion. But she, unfortunately, because of the way the system works, ended up having to plead to I think it was a voluntary manslaughter. Got a fairly short prison sentence, but a prison sentence nonetheless, because he was huffing paint, and we found some knives in the room, things like that. But they just said it wasn't reasonable, and
Because you didn't have a gun.
Because he didn't have a gun, so she shouldn't have shot him.
Hire another expert. I know somebody who can help with that.
She should have ran out of her own house, I guess. But yeah, and frankly, I think she probably didn't need to shoot a warning shot. But I think most people don't necessarily want to kill somebody that they.
Well, I worked on a
with,
similar case where
right.
a lady fired a warning shot at a guy who was coming up the stairs outside an apartment, outside stairs, to beat the hell out of her, because he believed that this woman had fired a round that hit a 10-year-old girl. That's still debatable, but and she fired a warning shot and finally shot him. Didn't kill him. Messed him up pretty good. Hit him in the top of the head and caused some damage in his head. She was convicted also, but the same thing. They reduced it to an attempt voluntary manslaughter or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think it's your husband, or even if you have, animosity at that moment, you don't necessarily want your first reaction to be to kill that person. So,
no, and I think the warning shots can be used to show you're not trying to kill them. It should negate the murder charge.
right.
You can clearly show it was intended as a warning. It's the
I've
same
had
as
multiple
yelling.
multiple cases of warning shots though, where the victims don't run away; they
Yeah.
just keep coming.
Well, they don't, and that's an IQ problem.
Right.
Obviously, if somebody fired a warning shot at me, I would leave.
I think I would too.
I'm a big chicken. I will not keep going to see. If you fire a warning shot at me, I'm going to leave. Trust me. I'm not going to stay there. South Florida Sentinel. This is on the 12th. A couple weeks. Officers called a report of shots fired at 12:49 a.m. Pembroke Apartments on 12th Street, investigating what appears to be an early morning home invasion robbery that left one suspect shot dead. We're going to get part of this story. We're going to have to break for the news break here. This was interesting. 3 men had entered the home through an unlocked door. Apparently, another guy who was crashing in the house had a deal, and he unlocked the door so his buddies could get in and rob some people. One of the guy, another unrelated guy living in the house, heard some noise. He looked out the window, saw a guy wearing a hoodie and a ski mask standing in the driveway, so he fired. You get the rest of this after the news break. Don't go away. Those of you not on radio are seeing us still sitting here, so I could tell you what happened, but that wouldn't be fair to the people that can't hear on the radio. That's our biggest audience, is the radio. So let me find something else I want to yak. You've had that many cases with people fired warning shots?
Oh yeah,
still?
I've had a few. I had another one where a client made a comment to a young woman, not noticing that her father and brother were sitting right there when she was a child. She was like a 19-year-old girl. Well, they came after him, and he pulled his gun out. Well, first he showed that he had a gun, and they kept coming towards him. Then he pulled it. He shot round at the ground, and they kept coming. So my client took off running away from these guys. He's the
Good
one with
choice.
the gun, and he ran around the apartment complex, came around the corner, and they were there. Came at him again, so he shot him. Killed one, attempt murder on the other, and again, this Clark County doesn't mess around. I mean, they charged the murder on the one and attempted murder on the other. He ultimately got a deal, I think, for manslaughter and a stipulated 4 to 10 year sentence. But because the risk of obviously going to trial is that the jury thinks.
Yeah, we kind
Doesn't
of have
believe
this
you or
rule that the person causing the confrontation that moves to the other one is the aggressor.
Or the person that has the gun is somehow the aggressor, even if they're not.
Even he's running away
Right.
and they catch him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's frightening in a lot of ways, but.
Well, I've had a few cases. I didn't realize they were that common, but I have heard of that. And it should be that, I don't know, maybe it just takes more experts or something to go in and say, look, this is,
Well, what
I mean, at one time I had that clear case, it didn't work. I mean, she got a less sentence.
Right.
But that was a problem with one of the attorney defending her was not a rocket scientist, and he's not listed on my website as an attorney I recommend. Okay.
The problem with going to trial is when they prosecute you for first-degree murder, you're potentially facing life in prison with no parole. So when they offer to you a plea bargain, potentially where you get probation or a minimum amount of time versus taking the risk of going to trial, a lot of people just aren't willing to do that if they have kids or a family or a career. They say, well, I feel like I was justified, but I have no choice because of the murder charge. So it's tough.
I understand that, and I had a client do exactly that same thing. He was probably had a good claim for self-defense, and it was questionable. The attorney wasn't sure about it. And we ended up, I ended up talking to the kid, and I mean, he's 20s, and he's 20 or 25, but looking at less than a year actual time or 5 years as the minimum on a 15-year sentence. And he insisted on going to trial, and we lost. You know, the jury didn't buy it. They it was split, and they re-deliberated. It was close. You know, we had a few, you know, keep deliberating, we're hung. You know, and ultimately, he ended up doing 5 years, and he would have done a year otherwise, and he already had about 4 months in jail. You know, credit for time served, as he couldn't bail out because of the charges. And
juries are
it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, juries are very unpredictable.
That's the problem, and people always ask their attorney to predict what the jury's going to do. I've had them ask me to predict what a court trial is going to do, and even there, you have no idea. Whether it's one guy who's a judge, or the whole jury, you have no idea what they're thinking. It's tough. We're about to come back. We are back on the radio. Okay, we're going to finish up this guy who got shot. Apparently this house, the owner rented rooms to people, and the three guys were coming in to rob a particular couple that was in the house. The other guy who was a tenant there just happened to look out the window when he heard cars in the driveway, sees a guy wearing a mask, and just shot at him. A warning shot. Actually, he killed him. It's kind of a serious warning shot, as that works out. Anyway, saw a bad guy, obviously wearing a mask at 12:49 a.m. As the police report says, approximately 12:49 a.m. Police are very precise. Shot him. He died. When the shooting started, the three guys that were in the house ran away. They were three males, aged 21, 20, and 23. The shooter was another 23-year-old. He's not with them. Anyway, the police eventually caught one of them. Because the dead guy, they got his ID and they investigated all this stuff. They found out that it was a setup. The guy who was staying in the house was in cahoots with these three other guys and a woman who set the whole thing up, an 18-year-old woman, who had planted the 23-year-old guy in the house to unlock the door, which he did. And they all went down eventually for felony murder because their crime caused the death of their co-conspirator by a third party who was not involved other than shooting one of the robbers. Felony murder rule says you conspire in a crime that somebody dies, even one of your compatriots, everybody can be charged with first-degree murder.
There's a killing during the course of one of the enumerated felonies, robbery, or mostly violent crimes. If there's a killing, then you're responsible for murder in addition to the underlying felony. So
even though, and that was a big deal in this case, these three people said, well, we didn't
pull the trigger.
We didn't shoot him. Or
matter.
Four people actually, and they all ended up in prison. The girl got the least time of all, and she's the one that set it up. You know how you do texting on your phones, and she's texting the guy in the house, "Okay, we're ready. Unlock the door now," and so forth and so on. She was like 3 towns away in Miami, running this home invasion by cell phone. And believe it or not, when they got the three guys, they all ratted her off too. So, no honor among thieves.
Yeah.
Let me see. I think we'll come back to that one. No, let's not. Yeah, I'm gonna run real quick here. This is then a Tennessean. It's a newspaper that covers Hermitage, Tennessee. Homeowner is thanking the world that he has great neighbors. This is what happened. A neighbor sees somebody with a van or with a trailer pull into a truck with a trailer hitch, pull into this guy's house and hook up the resident's trailer to the pickup truck and they start loading his belongings into the pickup truck. So the guy's not home. So the neighbor calls the guy on his cell phone, says there's people taking stuff out of her house. The guy starts that way. The neighbor then comes over and drives in and blocks their truck so they can't escape, which was nice. He detained one of the suspects at gunpoint. The two other people, a man and a woman, fled. When the guy who fled suddenly turned around and started coming back with his hands hidden around his waist, the neighbor fired a warning shot in the air, causing the guy to turn around and resume running. A warning shot that worked.
Yes.
And the guy ran. Police arrived. They found the 40-year-old suspect being held at gunpoint by the helpful neighbor. He admitted to police they were stealing the stuff in the utility trailer to support their heroin habit and so forth. And they're all in jail on bond for felony attempt theft and so forth. A very courageous neighbor. We all want to have neighbors that will help us like that. Obviously, there's a lot of risks involved here. This helpful neighbor, had he been shot, injured, whatever, you have to consider the risks when you have the visual on them, you have the license plate numbers and so forth. So they're not going anywhere. Anywhere in the United States, you're standing there and have all this information. Police have helicopters and dogs and highway patrol and everything. And you really don't have to stick your neck out like this. As like Chuck Muth, who we talked about earlier in the bank robbery here. Which brings me to the story that I'm kind of using to set up that one. This was a bank robbery also, where this is in Hatboro, Pennsylvania on the 22nd. A city councilman chased and shot a bank robber, will not face criminal charges, says the paper. The Montgomery district attorney said the evidence supported the councilman's claim that he was shooting in self-defense and had a reasonable use of non-deadly force. This guy is 60 years old. He's a councilman. He's driving down the road in the town he's councilman in. He saw a dye pack explode right outside a bank. They're little bombs they put in that throw ink all over the robbers. And he saw a man running with the bag. So he got out of his car and chased the suspect, 30-year-old guy, into a parking lot where he shot the suspect in the shoulder and the arm. The councilman said he confronted the suspect in the parking lot. The robber began walking towards him, saying, "Go ahead and shoot me." So he did. The prosecutor said that the councilman feared the suspect had a gun in his bag. He didn't see a gun, and he didn't actually have a gun, it turned out. But he intentionally aimed at the arm because he didn't want to kill anybody. The suspect, turns out, it was unarmed. He said he wasn't advancing when he got shot. The witnesses, however, corroborated the councilman's story that he was moving toward the councilman with his hands out of view. So the bottom line is the injured suspect was charged with bank robbery and some other charges. The part-time city councilman is a full-time teacher at the local high school and had a concealed carry permit for his Glock. Both the councilman and the district attorney stressed to the press the councilman was acting as a private citizen, not a government official, because you're still shooting an unarmed guy. So we don't want to have one of those lawsuits. Chasing a suspect is really risky. You could get shot for saving the bank's insured money. Again, I admire his courage, but this one is really foolish. The money's there. It fell out of the bag and it was all over the parking lot. And there's a little comedy thing about people trying to get it and to work. Maybe just keeping your distance. If you want to follow the guy discreetly and call 911 and now he's at 3rd Street and he's going into a blue house. You have nothing to gain by chasing this guy down at gunpoint because he might shoot back at you. You got an unarmed suspect, a maybe dicey civil lawsuit against the city councilman because a lawsuit lawyer is going to say, "Are you kidding me? He was a city councilman."
Yeah,
You know,
right.
and the city let him carry a gun or whatever. You know, there are no charges filed in the shooting, which is
Gotcha.
good. It may be possible this is a small town and the city councilman was the shooter. Maybe there's a little political intrigue there. We don't want to put Fred in jail, you know, because he's a good guy.
Well, no,
But-
also not to mention the fact that you could be putting other people at risk by shooting somebody on the street. I mean, if he's chasing somebody down, shooting at him, who knows, you know?
And bullets, even if they all hit him,
Ricochet
bullets
or-
go through people.
Right.
I mean, he
Yeah.
said he shot the, you know, he intentionally aimed for the suspect's arm. I really don't recommend that, and that may not even be true. That's something people tend to say when they're actually just going, "Oh my God," you know, and pulling the trigger. But that's two examples of doing the, well, I will now in future always call a Chuck move, shooting at an unarmed guy who's leaving the scene of a crime.
I'm sure they both have very, very good intentions. So we're probably also only acting in the, you know, in the moment, not thinking too.
Well,
too
they
far
are,
ahead,
and,
but
and I can forgive that. I'm not sure juries will, is the only thing.
sure.
Well, let's skip over that. There's a couple of Detroit stories here that I may have to push into next week, but I want to, because there's a couple of things I want to get to make sure. My outline is always way too long to get stuff done. Indianapolis. 50 minutes. This is ABC and the Indy Star in Indianapolis, Indiana. A 76-year-old man shot a man trying to rob his 75-year-old wife. The couple have rental properties. They use their home as the office for their rental properties. So people are forever, it's poor neighborhoods. They're coming to pay their rent usually in cash. So they have a lot of cash and they're old. A pretty clear target for street thugs. A 27-year-old suspect walked in because the office is open, you know, and the wife's there counting money and giving change. Where pointed his gun at the elderly woman's head and demanded money. The woman's husband, hearing the commotion, walked into the room, saw his wife with a gun pointed at her. He fired a shot out of fear for her life. The suspect fell, got back up, and then pointed his gun at the husband. It was the threat to him. The husband fired 2 more rounds, one of which at least struck the suspect in the head. He's in critical condition. They expect him to recover. He said, if someone comes in your home and you're in imminent fear and danger to your life, you have a right to protect yourself. I'm sorry, that statement is from the Indianapolis Metro Police spokesman on this case. He said the robbery suspect had multiple warrants. There's a surprise. For strangulation, dealing in drugs, possession of a firearm without a license, resisting law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. The elderly husband said he's pretty shaken up, but he's physically okay. If you are in this kind of situation where total strangers walk into your house and you know they know you have money there because you're selling something or dealing in paying rents and so forth, think about what you're doing. Get a door with a buzzer on it. Get a video running so people know if they walk in, they'll be on film, so they're less likely to shoot you dead. Criminals notice those things when they stalk you. They hit places because they're easy to rob. The elderly guy is pretty shook up, and he's really hoping the guy survives. They're a very religious couple, and he really didn't want to kill anybody, as most people don't. So try and deter them by scaring them off, making your business or your home a harder target, and then maybe they won't pick your house. Fortunately, the guys, they're okay, the couple, and 75 years old is not the time to be getting into gunfights. Never had a confrontation in your whole life.
There are inexpensive things, like you said, too, a buzzer, a dog, you know, there's things that don't.
A German Shepherd that you keep there, they'll all think it's trained to attack whoever, you know, yells at you. There was some coverage. I want to get this story because it's a big deal. Salt Lake City, Utah, the Utah Supreme Court decided this week a couple of groups of Walmart employees trying to stop shoplifters, or one guy with a bat trying to hit customers and goofy people in the store. A couple of these groups, the employees got injured in 2 different Walmarts because of bad guys, and they would not have got injured if Walmart allowed them to carry firearms. They have licensed concealed carry. Walmart prohibits firearms for their employees. They sued, and the Utah Supreme Court decided on the 21st with a 4-1 ruling that their termination was wrongful. And now they ordered it back to the lower court or back to federal court, where the initial lawsuit came from the incidents. This is a big deal because most employers have rules that say the employees can't carry guns. And Walmart is obviously going to appeal this and hire into the federal system. But for now, Walmart stores, at least in Utah, apparently have to let their employees carry guns if they've got a license to do so in Utah. I don't know. It didn't clear in the article I got and the other one I read. It didn't clearly say whether the court simply remanded it back to the lower court for a decision, or they ordered that Walmart change their policy. So I don't know if they're carrying guns now or they got their jobs back. I know they were ordered to be rehired and given back pay. Whether they were ordered also to let them carry the guns, I don't know. This was a thing about labor law. It wasn't about the guns. So anyway, they're back with back pay. One of the shoplifters pulled a pocket knife and threatened to stab the employee, so forth. So they were in serious danger, and they weren't allowed to have their guns, and it could have cost them serious injury or death. So there's some data coming up in the case. CDC studies have shown that armed victims suffer less injuries than unarmed victims. And the left side always says it the other way around, but the real numbers are, if you resist an attack or a rape, you are less likely to be injured overall. There are cases both ways, but if you look at all the numbers over the last 10 years, CDC says you're safer resisting. When we end the radio show at 7, we're going to continue on YouTube for a little bit with a couple of other stories. So if we go off the radio, you can continue to watch us on Periscope, or go to flip out your iPad or your iPhone and watch us on YouTube, except if you're driving. You can listen, but don't look at the dang thing while you're driving. There's a company in San Francisco called Highbridge Arms. It is the only gun shop operating in the city of San Francisco. They are closing their store now, having their little going out of business sale. Following the introduction of a law this week, the city of San Francisco approved a law that they're required to video all their customers' guns and ammo sales and transmit that data to the police department at least once a week. The new regulations also end the shop's or cause the shop requirement to hand over personal information, including names, addresses. They have to send them all the data and a picture of the guys and everything. Highbridge have made it, the owner made it official they're going out of business. Sent in a letter that says, "This tremendous sadness, we have to go out of business because of the law." There is nothing in this story that says they're selling guns to criminals or anything like that. That if they violated the law selling guns to bad guys, they'd close them down for that. They just made a rule that any gun shop in San Francisco, which is only them, is required to videotape and their customers and send all the data to the police department every week.
Did they decide to stop doing that, or to go out of business because it's an invasion of their client's privacy, or because it's impossible to do that?
Well, they can do that. It's expensive, of course, to do that, but
Well, it requires a lot
because they don't think that they're going to lose customers. Bear in mind that this is San Francisco. You can go across the bridge to Oakland and not be videotaped, and a lot of the public, I mean, it'll deter criminals, but we deter them with background checks anyway. You know,
Right.
it's just, it's a constitutional issue, and I think they're just so overregulated. They're going, this is it. You know, now I got to put in video cameras and tell the police, you know, and every gun we sell and all guns and all ammunition, videotape the sale, all the paperwork.
So even if you just bought ammunition, didn't buy a gun, you still have
It's
to take
ammunition
a
too, gun or ammunition sale.
So only, I mean, so any sale. So I came in and bought a box of bullets.
I guess
they have to
Pocket
videotape
knife,
that.
yeah, they have to videotape
Wow.
that too. Well, in California now they have to record ammunition anyway.
Mhm.
That's a state law. And anyway, it's not good. And they decided to heck with it because it's an inconvenience, it's expensive, and you can drive, you know, 30 minutes and you're in a different town. And some of the towns around there have the same rules, but not all of them. And it's going to kill them financially. We have a gun show coming up at the Sports Center October 17 and 18. We will be there selling our brass. We may have an attorney there to talk to you about gun cases if you want. I get some calls and emails that I can't tell you who I am, but this happened, you know, and I can't help you. I mean, I can give you advice, but if you want to talk to a lawyer in person, where there's confidentiality requirements, hopefully we'll have an attorney there. Maybe we'll have an attorney there. Nevada Farms Coalition is running a fundraiser for the NRA and themselves at Pro Gun Club in Boulder City on October 23rd. Call Michelle at 702-591-7455 for info. The Venetian Hotel and Casino is having their annual dinner for Keystone Corporation, which is a group I'm a member of. And they've got Dana Perino as their guest speaker. This is on October 30. If you would like to attend, it's a very nice dinner at the Venetian. Get a hold of me, send a note to that Bob at firedupmail.com, and I will get you the application to come to the dinner. It's going to be a great conservative bust out. Has nothing to do with guns, only has to do with Dana Perino, and she's on the 5. And they're a great dinner and whatnot. Shortly, there's going to be a movie called The Big Short out December 15, we think. It's based on a book by Michael Lewis about the buildup to the housing bubble. A bunch of crooks were here in Vegas, and they did a lot of short selling and this and that and made themselves billions of dollars off the government. The movie stars Brad Pitt and Christian Bale and Ryan Gosling and Steve Carell. It's going to be released early in 2016, maybe as early as December 15th. I bring it up because we're in it. I mean, the gun store's in it. I got a call from a film crew from Paramount wanting to film the store outside, and I said, sure. And when I went out to talk to the film crew, one of their location guys says, yeah, Bob, I did a movie with a guy years ago, and I used to work in movies. He said, yeah, I talked him into bringing me, to the gun store and this and that because they wanted to film me outside of a gun shop. And then the director came over and he said, well, I thank you for picking the gun store. And he said, we didn't pick it. The bad guys picked it. This is a true story. And these guys were in Vegas and they came to the gun store to shoot in between ripping everybody off in the housing bubble. So we're going to be in, the building at least is going to be in this movie because criminals shoot here. That didn't sound good.
No, it didn't.
Next Saturday, we're going to be back here at the same time with defense attorney Alan Butel. You can, as I said, you can watch a show on YouTube. It's being recorded as it's broadcast. So you don't have to be here at 6 o'clock to watch the show. You can actually see it on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. We've got a bunch of shows there, some with better electronics. I think we got everything working for this one. It looks like the crew is putting their thumb up, so we're probably there. Check it out when you get time. If you would like to talk to us about guest speakers or things like that, some of our staff does that. Tony, our gunsmith, will, and I do, and some of our attorneys. You can call us at the office number 702-333-0033. 333-0033. That's a recorder. You can just leave a message on it, and I'll call you back and set up whatever you need. Thanks for listening on radio and watching us on YouTube. If we're losing you right now, this next story is going to just flip you out. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate that. We have free CCW classes here and so forth. Don't forget that. Didn't plug that in here anyplace. Are we clear? We are off radio. We are off radio. We have gone. Bye, K-Don. Hi, YouTube. Now we can say things the FCC doesn't let us say.
Like criminals shoot here. How about criminals have shot here? How about that?
I'm sure other criminals have that aren't as famous as these guys. But I mean, it's like Christian Bale and Brad Pitt and all that. And none of them were here.
Brad Pitt back here?
No, they filmed the interiors at a range in New Orleans because they had the whole cast there doing outside stuff because these guys were in New Orleans and then they came to Las Vegas. So they filmed the interior of some other range, but the producer said that it's a really nice range, so it's going to make us look really good when it won't be our range in the actual movie. But yeah, this is so cool. I mean, it's just really slick. This is a news story that is from my I couldn't make this up if I tried file. When I first read this, I expected the end of a paragraph to get a line to go, haha, we fooled you and made you believe this. Really happened. This really happened. Quick summation, and then we're going to discuss some points in it. An acting district attorney in Nassau County, New York, claims, of course, they're committed to justice, compassion, and integrity, and boasts about keeping more vulnerable people safe, now has a new policy that says their staff, their attorneys, their prosecutors who work for this office are not allowed to possess handguns at all. On duty, off duty, in their homes. They have a policy that says, as a mandatory condition of employment, the assistant district attorney application information and instruction form says it requires the applicant to acknowledge, I understand that as an assistant DA, I'm not permitted to apply for a handgun permit nor own or possess a handgun while employed by the Nassau County District Attorney. They are making us safe, or they're making Nassau County safe by not allowing prosecutors to own handguns. This has nothing to do with carrying one into court. I know fairly well 24 prosecutors in various courts around, and on a hello basis, another 20 or 25. You know,
Hundreds,
bazillion prosecutors. Prosecutors are the guy who stands up in court and says, this scumbag deserves 20 years in prison because he did this and did that, and he's a rat fink and subhuman and whatever, and I want you to put him in prison, to the jury or the judge. Criminal defendants really don't like prosecutors. We've had a number of prosecutors murdered over the last bunch of years, sought out by criminal gangs, motorcycle gangs, whatever. You've seen stories. Probably the most vulnerable law enforcement on the planet. And this lady is making them, if they own a handgun, they cannot work for the office. where do we start? Unconstitutional? I mean, stupid doesn't cover it.
It makes zero sense. It makes no sense. I mean, it's like saying police officers can't carry guns in some ways.
Well, that's been tried a few places off duty. They're not allowed to carry guns in a few departments.
Yeah,
Still.
and does this also apply to they can't carry a gun or they can't own or possess a gun? But what about their spouse? I mean, what about the people that live in their house? They can.
Well, on the criminal side, when they're not allowed to own guns, we don't let their spouse have a gun either, most places.
They can't protect themselves in their own homes. To and from work.
You leave the courthouse and walk into the giant parking garage, which has a guard at the end of it.
Right.
And you've got 100 people out there that you've put in prison that you don't know, probably don't know that they're getting out or they've gotten out or they made bail or whatever.
Or friends of those guys or.
Yeah, with gangs and whatever. We're going to get rid of that prosecutor because he's trying to put Louis in jail. I mean, these guys are, men and women are incredibly vulnerable. And I'm looking for some validity to say, even from their warped side, this makes sense. How? Maybe she wants to get all new lawyers. She's the acting DA. So, and maybe she wants to bring in new people and wants to get them all to quit.
It's one way to do it. It just really doesn't. I just can't
all
understand
prosecutors own guns. You know, if they don't like guns, they have one in their house, they have a concealed weapon permit, they have one in their car because they are targets constantly. And this go way beyond really stupid. What could possibly be that she says it makes everybody safer if people don't have guns, including law enforcement. If anybody should know when it's reasonable to shoot somebody and when it's not reasonable, it'd be a lawyer who works in the system on whatever side. So you've got pistol permits, they've got concealed weapon permits, they're allowed because they've had training. So if anything, I would, other than probably not as much training, I would assume they'd make better shoot, don't shoot decisions than police do.
Possibly.
You know, if they're thinking of all the case law while they're going bang, they're probably not.
Yeah, these are law-abiding people who, just like you and I, have a right to protect themselves. I mean, but even more need to. You know, it really makes. I don't understand the public policy behind it at all. If she's saying, "Well, we'll set an example to the community that guns are bad somehow by disarming our prosecutors," I really just don't understand it.
From a legal standpoint, if you took this case to overturn this decision, and I don't expect you to know New York law.
Thank you.
But there's well, I mean, they have laws. You can't have a magazine that holds more than 10 shots.
Sure,
and all that kind of stuff. But and it doesn't cover rifles because the New York Supreme Court has specifically said people are allowed to own rifles. They eliminated AR-15s and other things, but you can have a 30-30 or carbine with a 10-shot clip that isn't detachable and there's all kinds of crap. But for self-defense, everybody carries handguns. That's the primary weapon of police, of everybody, prosecutors. All law enforcement is primarily handguns because you can carry it conveniently and you have it in your glove box or your pocket or wherever. And I would have to assume this is unconstitutional on the federal level.
I would imagine so, and I suspect it's not gonna stick. I just think there's gonna be too much. If there's not a lawsuit, there's just gonna be too much public outrage over it, and I think internally too. I mean, I think it's asking your employees basically, like those Walmart workers. You're putting yourselves in a dangerous situation by virtue of your
employment. I did mention one of the Walmart workers. The guy was trying to stab him, and he got injured trying to defend himself barehanded. And the other group, the guy had a baseball bat and a swing at him, so on. But these guys are some of the brightest people on the planet. I mean, I just cannot imagine that this would stand constitutional muster, even in New York, that it's legal under New York law to tell an employee who is basically a chief law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
I mean, the DA's office tells cops what they're allowed to do. It's like,
and they maybe will say, well, you can't bring it into the courthouse, or you can't bring it into the office, but to
okay,
mandate that they can't have it in their
they
own.
can't bring it in the courtroom anyway,
right?
Presumably, because there's a lot of stuff on that. These are generally courts where the bailiffs are not allowed to have firearms in the court. Only the guys on the metal detectors, so they don't want guns, or a criminal could grab one, and so on and so on. And there are courtrooms. If you live on the West Coast, you're not used to this, but there are courtrooms on the East Coast where nobody has a gun. The bailiffs are not armed with firearms. And there are bailiffs in the building with firearms and lots of buttons, and somebody will come, if you hit the right button, somebody with a gun will show up, like right now. But they want to keep the courtroom clear. And we do that here. I've been in court where we had a gun that was used in an incident, a crime, or whatever, that we have the exemplar, the gun that was used, where I have to say, yes, I've examined the gun and it does this and whatever. And that exhibit has to be there so the other side can examine it, or usually I'm the other side trying to examine it. But we have the gun in the courtroom, but literally 15 people check that gun. Well, not literally 15, 5 check the gun. The bailiff checks it, and then the police expert checks it, and we all check it. There's nobody's carrying a bullet, and so on and so on, to protect ourselves from ourselves. But I haven't ever contemplated shooting somebody in court. But this is, I'm getting off on a rant here that has no place to go. And Nassau County, I don't know what they're going to do with this. These are great government jobs. This pays a lot of money. These are $100,000, $150,000 a year guys, the prosecutors, or
That's the way.
yeah. And there aren't that many jobs out there. I mean, everybody's cutting back, and I assume they're cutting staff and this and that and the other thing. So I'm not sure these guys can just transfer to the next county and become a prosecutor again. Or, they're like 3 weeks from retirement or whatever,
Yeah, I'd like to know what they have to say about it. I'd like to know.
Be interesting to see. I mean, there's going to be some discussion on this on the major networks, I'm sure, next week. It hit a couple of minor mentions already on the national media, and you can expect. This was pointed out by the NRA that this happened, but it was picked up by a local blogger in New York that started this whole thing. A professor that does criminal law saw this go through in Nassau County, and the fine print. This is the story we're using, and the real story is like this long and much smaller type, and there's a lot of details to it. The lady's office said, our practice of asking prosecutors not to possess handguns is to ensure the safety and comfort of staff, victims, and witnesses, and consistent with other district attorney's office in New York metropolitan area. Bull. It's not consistent with any other offices, even in the New York area. They don't bar prosecutors from owning guns. They bar them from bringing them into the courtroom. Anyway, I'm done. There's a couple other stories I wanted to run, and we'll run them in next week. I appreciate your tuning in to Fired Up and on YouTube and on Periscope. I hope the Periscope thing went okay. If you're not on Periscope and you want to look at it, if you're a Twitter follower, there's a Periscope app that's attached to that. They leave the Periscope stories on for 24 hours. YouTube, they're on basically forever. If our stuff worked. And my engineering staff says it did. I can see ourselves on the monitor there, and my head's right in front of where the email is. It's right there. Friend us on Facebook. A lot of you have been doing that. We're like running 1,700 people have friended us on Facebook, and it really has impressed me with how far YouTube goes. I have cops and whatnot from Croatia and all over the place that have friended us on Facebook, and I really appreciate that. It's nice, and I'm getting some interesting emails about what they do and where they're restricted and so forth. Interesting, learning a lot. I appreciate all the feedback. Please do. We like good feedback and bad feedback. We're doing something stupid. Let us know. Other than being on Saturday night when you have to be out doing something else, we're working on that with the station to see if we can get a time in Wednesday evening, maybe. Working on that. So hang on, we'll get there. Thank you, Andy, for being here again.
Thank you. My pleasure, as always.
These are fun. I have a great time doing these shows. If everything worked tonight and it looked like it did, wow, this will be one in a row. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week, 6 o'clock. Thanks for listening.